Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where we have been working here on our planet visitor, and we've got this variant of it that we're going to send out to the Venus analog. And in order to do that, we're in orbit right now, and we're going to need to get ourselves into orbit around Juno. So let's push our way out over this way. I want to see where that's putting our orbit. Okay. That is obviously not the directionality of orbit that we want. So let's bring this in and put this like here. That's much better. Okay, so I want to set Sergia as our target here because I want to be able to see what the actual orbit looks like. So we're going to want to bring this out a bit. Interesting on that closest approach, but let's just put this into an orbit that's something like this for right now. Okay, so we can find ourselves a better approach on the way through. This is going to be 1.37 kilometers per second. Let's go ahead and head on over to that node, and let's burn this. So this burn time is going to be not applicable. Okay, 4.4 minutes. We're definitely going to want to fast forward this burn. No doubt about that. So this is going to put us into, this is going to put us into escape velocity from Drew, is the idea. So that is absolutely fine, and that's going to be a little bit of a burn. No doubt about it. At 3.4 minutes. So our inclination should be pretty, this is a little inclined, actually. That's a little bit more inclined than Eve is in KSP, for sure. Are we going to want an inclination change? I don't know. Let's, I think let's think about what that would look like after we escape the SOI here. Inclination on Sergia is 2.86 degrees. Okay. That's probably enough to justify an inclination change. That's definitely more inclined than Eve is. It's not terribly inclined. We could probably get away with not doing that, but we'll see. And another thing that I'm interested in is one of the ways that KSP makes Eve so rough to work with is because it has the densest gravity in the entire system. It's even denser than the gas giant, if I recall correctly. It's insane. So that's rough. Right? There's no doubt about that. Now you can see we burned through a lot of the fuel in this tank on our escape velocity, but that's expected. And we'll see what this feels like once we get out here. Okay, so we're now in escape mode. Let's get on out of here. Eventually we'll get there. 250,000x? Yeah, that's probably good enough. We'll change SOIs here. There we go. So now we changed SOI, and what I want to do at this point is I want to go to our descending node. So let's see what an inclination change here would look like. So we know that we're targeting, if we target Sergia here, that's Volko. If we target Sergia, 2.86 is our desired inclination. Okay. So that is absolutely fine. Our current inclination is 0.01. So we can just crank that on up to 2.86. Like that. And that should do the trick for the moment. Yeah, so what is that inclination change going to be in DV? 145, that's not bad. How much do we have left? 740. Okay, let's do this inclination change. And then we're going to look for a transfer window. Of course, we're going to need a braking burn once we get there. I'm a little concerned about this. Now, this is going to be lower than it was before because we added additional mass onto this. We've got the parachutes in here, right? So there's additional mass there. So that's absolutely noted. Okay, so there's that inclination change complete. Now we can find ourselves some form of a transfer. So what kind of DV is this looking like? 400 to transfer over? Okay. So timing is going to be a little bit awkward here. For sure. But we do get something out over this direction. Noted. So that's going to be in a while, and this is very hard to read. We shouldn't actually need anything here. So let's just dial this in a little bit. I'm going to turn this sensitivity way, 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 way down. Okay, maybe a little less down than that. Okay, I want to bring this into somewhere around, I guess that'll do. We could change the timing probably to dial that in a little bit further. 22.1 megometers. Okay. Maybe a little radial if we really wanted to dial that in. Yeah, radial does the trick. So then we'd need a little retrograde to continue to pull that in. Okay, so this would be about 5,000 kilometers. I want to check in on the altitude of this moon. 357 megometers? Okay, so we don't need to dial this in anywhere near this much. So having this be just barely inside would be absolutely fine. This timing is not exactly ideal then. So we'd want to bring this around and have this timing be more like here, right? So something like that. That's much better in terms of our relative speed anyway. And this is also going to be a pretty soon burn, so good timing on the transfer window. We can dial this in a little bit if we really wanted to, but to be honest, I think 400 megometers is fine. Our inclination is going to be kind of wacky anyway, right? So that seems relatively okay. 344 meters per second is going to be the majority of our remaining interplanetary transfer stage. Wow, we just snapped position there. That was exciting. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this burn completed, and we'll transfer on over. So it seems like we're probably going to need a little bit more power going to Volco, would be my guess. So we're kind of pushing the boundaries here. I'm also not entirely convinced that we're going to be able to take off on the other side. I'm also noting this is the flickering back and forth between green and white. Let's bring this in a little bit closer. Hopefully that's good enough. Okay, let's warp this in, and let's go to about here. Now, where is Sergia now? Ah, there we go. It is actually visible. Cool. So let's continue to head in around this direction. We'll get a lot closer. Where are you at, Sergia? Oh, yeah, very visible from here. Okay, let's head on in. And at this point, we just want to move into the different SOI, right? And then we're going to need to do a braking burn once we get here. In theory, 357 meters per second. We'll see what that ends up actually being. Okay, so we've entered the SOI of Sergia for the first time, and is this giving us an encounter over Ord? As is. That's lucky. And that would capture us. Fascinating. Well, that worked out very well. I definitely didn't plan that, but that was incredible. Absolutely wonderful. Let's just warp down to that SOI change then. We don't have any inclination problem. This is perfect. Absolutely wonderful. It's like we planned it this way, but we absolutely did not. I love it. Okay, let's hop into the SOI. And there's the second achievement. Beautiful. And at this periapsis, we're going to do a braking burn. And this braking burn, very low DV. I like it. I'm wondering... This is big, isn't it? This is really big. Ord is incredibly large. We may well not be able to take off of Ord again. Let's bring this down to about 80 kilometers. And if that's the case, that's fine. We can transfer out to Sergia again with a different lander. And this may or may not... Like, we knew that this would have an atmosphere on it, right? You can just see the atmosphere there. There's clearly an atmosphere. It's probably very thin, and we will see how successful we are landing on this, but we were able to successfully land on Silero, so this should be absolutely fine in theory. Let's go ahead and run this burn here, 481 meters per second, so we're going to burn out this stage. That's fine. Okay, so we're going to have to swap stages here in a moment, and there's our Ord orbit. And let's see if we're able to successfully land on this with this, like, very generic design. 1% fuel remaining here. I'm just looking at our thrust to weight, but we're very high up still. Okay. What just happened? This inner stage isn't firing, I don't think. No, it did fire. Our engines aren't. We've had this bug before. All I'm going to do is I'm going to cut our throttle, and I'm going to turn all of these engines on, like this. We've had this bug happen before. It's fine. I don't think this is actually a bug, though. I think that the staging is a bit messed up. That's okay. We'll manually stage it. That's fine. This is probably on me. Okay, so now we'll resume this and commence this burn. Okay. Looking at thrust to weight, it looks fine. And we know that we've got extra fuel up here, right? So keep in mind that the amount of stage delta V we have here is not real. This is fake. So that's understood. This is currently at 1/4 speed. Okay, let's take this up to 2x speed. That'll be much better, because at this point, this is going to be a pretty long burn. Our thrust to weight on this is probably not phenomenal. So let's see here. Ord is down here right now. It's definitely a thin atmosphere, though, given the impact craters. I mean, impact craters are going to happen kind of no matter what, but they will be lessened by a thick atmosphere because there'll be a lot of, like, breakup of rocks coming in, and it'll also slow them down, so the impact will be less extreme. This has a ring? This has an orbital ring. That's neat. It's a moon with a ring. That does not show up in the map view. But there's definitely a ring there. Huh. Fascinating. Well, let's bring this on down, and the question is, just how much speed are we going to build up as we fall down here? It's probably going to be pretty significant, would be my guess. Also, are we actually in the maneuver here? Maybe. 2, 1. No, we're overburning. Okay, let's pull this back then and get this turned around, opening up the nav ball so that we can see where we actually are. We overshot by 1.1 meters per second, and that just indicates that we're not in this mode. That's fine. We are not surprised by that. So 0.5 meter per second to correct here. And there, that'll do. Cool. So let's get rid of that maneuver. And at this point, I want to come down to the periapsis here, and I want to try to circularize this. Let's see what we've got going on here for DV. That's pretty extensive. Okay. So that's understood. And I don't know what the atmospheric height here is, so that's going to require some experimentation as well. We're probably just going to do a landing burn from 80. Let's go ahead and execute this burn. That's going to be about 500 meters per second, and that's absolutely understood. So in we come, and the orbital ring, of course, we are now inside of. There's just... It's very fine, too. Very thin. That makes sense. Okay. So this is going to be our target here. Cool. So this is going to be a 6-minute burn. We should absolutely burn through that as quickly as possible. And I'm wondering right now, what's our thrust to weight at this position? 0.41. What just happened? We just tumbled and lost our solar panels. I feel like that was a bug. I don't think there was anything that we hit. Wait a sec. Air density. We're in atmosphere at this altitude. This is a high altitude then. Okay, we're just going to lock velocity retrograde. Burn maximally. I'm going to activate these landing legs. We're going to try this. We're going to go for it. I don't know if this is going to work. This is much higher up than I expected to run into atmosphere. That's for sure. Much, much, much higher up. That means that this has a pretty thick atmosphere. The good news is we are coming in over here, so we're going to be landing in the light side. That's definitely great. And I want to be in surface velocity here. We need to get down under 1 kilometer per second to be able to safely deploy these chutes. And we'll see how this goes. I don't think we're taking off from here again. But I mean, this isn't a small rocky moon, so that's not surprising. It's got a ring. It's got a pretty high atmosphere. So I want to make sure that we're transferring this fuel down to have our... drain the tank. To have our center of gravity be as low as possible. So we're going to be draining from this tank up here. You can see shock diamonds beginning to form. We're going pretty slowly at this juncture, though. So that's looking good. Overexpansion damage already. Okay. 4, 3, 2. Okay. So we're almost burned out of fuel here. Here's what I'm thinking right now. A, I'm going to turn this off. But B, we're going to keep an eye on that overexpansion damage. Okay, we got to cut these engines. I'm now going to jettison the engines. So what that's going to end up doing is exposing our heat shield here, which I don't think we actually need. But there we go. These engines are apparently still chilling here. I don't know what they're connected to. But the heat shield is exposed at this point. So now all we need to do is get... Oh, wow, look at that surface speed going down. Shocking. Okay, I'm going to arm our chutes right now. Max speed of 1 kilometer per second. Yeah, I'm aware of that. Okay, I want to be locked to velocity retrograde. We're still slowing down. Let's activate these chutes. And I think we're completely safe here. This is a much thicker atmosphere than I expected to run into on a moon, for sure. So that's interesting. No doubt about that. There's some sort of a liquid down here. That's for sure. Looks like we're going to be landing on land, so that's absolutely okay. We're quite high up at this point, so this is going to be a long drift downward. But I was not expecting to be coming in for a landing at this point. I thought that 80 kilometers would probably be a safe atmosphere or a safe height to be above the atmosphere. That's not correct here. So that's definitely interesting. Now you can see we're currently traveling at like 53 meters per second, right? That's still pretty quick. No doubt about that. But these chutes have not expanded at this time. And we're still 20 kilometers off the ground. Well, 21 and a half. That's going to be pretty significant. So, yeah, this is much different from what I was expecting from this moon. I knew it had an atmosphere just based on the look of it, but I was not expecting it to have this big of an atmosphere. Oh, wow, our chute's deployed. Okay, so chutes are deployed, and we're currently falling at about 24 meters per second. I don't know that that's, strictly speaking, survivable. Now, these engines, they have built up some overexpansion damage. They are not intended to be fired in an atmosphere anywhere near this thick. So that is absolutely understood. They're still attached, so apparently these engines are attached to this tank, which I find odd. But, I mean, if that's the case, that's fine. We can use them to try to cushion our landing as long as we don't have them explode, right? So we're going to have to keep an eye on the overexpansion damage. We can try to cushion that a little bit, but the atmosphere is going to get quite a lot thicker on the way down. We're just going to be locked to retrograde. This is fine. Battery's at 95, so the atmosphere is going to get a fair amount thicker on the way down, so we will slow down more. This was the re-entry profile I was intending for Sergia, pretty much. But this is certainly taking us a while to fall at this point. 22 meters per second, not terribly fast, but also not terribly slow either. It's in that awkward point where I don't want to land at this speed, but I also don't really want to fall. So that's awkward. So that atmosphere height must be pretty high then, right? And so this is a quite thick atmosphere, no doubt about it. Interesting. I would not have guessed that based on the cratering. But I guess maybe what that actually indicates isn't necessarily, in this case, atmosphere thickness, but perhaps lack of tectonic activity. That's also something that could be happening here, because if there's no tectonic activity happening and a crater happens, it just stays there, right? And it doesn't get reshaped by things like tectonic plates or volcanoes or any of that stuff. So that is another potential explanation for what we've got going on here. And to be honest, this world does not look particularly tectonically active to me, judging by the fact that I see no mountains at all. There's a couple of hills like up over here, but those are probably created by impact ejecta from these large craters, right? There's maybe this that you could argue maybe that's like the result of a tectonic plate, but even that could be impact ejecta, theoretically. Yeah. This over here is definitely impact ejecta, no doubt about that. I think that's what we're seeing here. I think that this is a world that is comprised almost entirely of craters, mostly because there's not much tectonic activity, and this is just a result of a very long period of time of bombardment. And that makes sense. I'm definitely okay with that. So our current altitude is about 10 kilometers here. We could make the argument that we should fall faster by cutting these parachutes and then repacking them with this button and deploying them again after we fall a ways. That is definitely an argument that can be made, and it's not one I'm going to make. Reason being, automatic repacking of chutes is not really something that exists. I'm okay with this if you have someone there to repack the chutes, the way it works in KSP. But in this game, you can just repack them anywhere at any time, and I kind of don't like that, so we're going to avoid that. That means that we have to fall as it is. Now, remember, we turned off auto cut on these chutes, so they will not cut until we hit the ground. And that's a good thing. That's exactly what we want. So our current lateral velocity is 0. Our vertical velocity is about 18 meters per second. This is definitely looking more survivable, and we're still about 8 kilometers off of the ground here. So we're going to be dropping down into the 17.x meter per second range here. That looks decent. And I am going to be using our engines to cushion us, I think. But we'll see how that goes. Our thrust to weight is not going to be 1.0, so we're just going to do a maximum burn, but we're going to have to stop that burn before our Spirit engines overexpand damage, right? We've already built up half of our overexpansion damage, so the question is, how much of that can we actually get away with? I don't know. We may be better off to just let the deceleration happen just via the air density. The air density is still going up quite a bit. 800 grams per meter cubed at this point. Definitely increasing steadily. Ambient temperature is 6 Celsius. Wow, that is surprisingly cold for the day side this close in. Huh. I would have expected this ambient temperature to be substantially higher than this. Maybe somewhere around, like, 40 or 50 Celsius? Would be my guess. Interesting. I guess that's also potentially an effect of the atmosphere. Huh. There's a lot of good science to be done here. I like it. So downward we go, and we're currently at about 4.5 kilometers of altitude here. We're still going down at 2x, and that's understood. That air density continuing to shoot up, and that's actually a very good thing for us. Our vertical velocity is down to 16 meters per second. I strongly suspect that we will survive this impact at this point, at this speed. These piston legs are very likely capable of absorbing 16 meters per second. So that's very interesting for sure. I'm also kind of glad that we're coming down on land. I'm kind of less glad that we're coming down on, like, this area here, which is going to, like, cause us to slide down towards the water? I don't know if this is actually water. It's some form of liquid, and it's blue liquid. That's all we know. But we're getting close to 1 kilogram per meter cubed of air density at this point, and still going up at a very steady rate. We're now up over 1 kilogram. And keep in mind, we still have basically the entire fuel here because I was expecting to have to do a primarily powered landing like on Silero. I was expecting the atmospheric characteristics here to be very similar to Silero. And that is definitely not the case. That's for sure. This is a very different world. No doubt about that. So we're currently about 1.8 kilometers above the ground here. Definitely making good progress. Air pressure here still ramping up. 89 kilopascals. Okay. We're down to 14 meters per second. I don't know how much slower we're going to get. Air density is still ramping up, so we are still decelerating. That's interesting. Air pressure still going up. We're now about 800 meters up, moving at about 14 meters per second. My main worry right now is if we kick this up, they take so much overexpansion damage that they instantly explode and take the whole craft with. Okay, I'm going to take us out of 2x for right now. Okay, noted. Watching that overexpansion damage. We're about 100 meters up right now. Okay. Not the greatest landing in the world, but it succeeded. This is what we needed. Okay, so we cushioned it a little bit with the spirit landing. It wasn't very flat, and that's why this spirit engine landed, or was destroyed rather, and also that's why we tipped over, but that's absolutely fine. I'm really not very concerned about this. This did what I wanted it to do. Now, obviously, we're not going to be taking off from here again, right? Thruster weight of 0.01, not to mention the overexpansion damage. So this thing is stuck here at this point, and we're going to have to send another one to Sergia. But that's okay. I'm quite content with that. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. We don't need to keep this around. We got what we needed, and let's head to Sergia next. But it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode, we're off to Sergia. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Andy McGar, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.